Hello. Hello. Thank you very much for coming. Has everyone got kind of a seat, a drink, comfortable? You might have to bear with us this evening because we've got a slightly interesting speaker note set up where we've got to press right on 2 keyboards, which I thought was fine until I realized I've also got to hold the mic. Welcome to Design Club number 9. Can I have a quick show of hands for anyone who's been to a design club before? Okay, about half. So for anyone who hasn't been before, Design Club is or aims to be a quarterly meetup where we share stories about design, how it affects or is affected by the world around us. And as usual, we have 2 fantastic speakers for you this evening. The first speaker is going to be Jonny Burch, who'll be talking about climbing metaphorical mountains and the journey he's been on as a first-time designer and founder. And then we also have Beth Brettingham of Monzo, talking about how being a parent doesn't have to mean pulling back on our careers as designers, but instead can push us to do the best work of our lives. Before we get stuck in, we're going to hear a quick word from our host, Transferwise. Jacopo's turned up, thankfully. These guys have kindly lent us their space and provided drinks and that kind of thing. So big round of applause for Jacopo and Transferwise.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks to everyone who's here. It's really a pleasure to host Design Club, and I'm really, really happy to see so many people turn up tonight. So thank you for being here. I'm gonna be very, very quick. Just do a couple of announcement. First one is toilets. So if you didn't know, the one is located, the closest is located in the back, just down in the corner. And the next one is up the stairs on the left where you came in. Second announcement is fire escape. So in the very unlikely event then the fire alarm goes off, we have 2 fire wardens here. Auntie over there, please say hi. Thank you. And Laws on the other side of the room. So they will guide us to the closest fire escape and down to assembly point around the corner of the building. The closest fire exit is there where the bathrooms are. And the second one is just down the corridor on the left. Last thing is that Transferwise is hiring. For who doesn't know what Transferwise does, we have a very clear mission, which is money without borders, making them transparent, instant, convenient, and eventually free. So there's quite a lot of effort. We have 45 designers currently in the team, and we're looking for more. So if you're interested to know more about how we're doing things, how we do design here, and some of the openings that we have, please come talk to me or the rest of the team. There are quite a few of us here, so if you can just wave. Okay, great. Now everyone is here. Fantastic. We'll pick up that later. Without taking way too much time and going too much into details, we're looking for designers across the board. So we're specifically brand and creative. We're looking then for copywriters and UX writer. We're looking for user research and obviously product designers. All levels are welcome, and that's about it for me. Please enjoy the show, and I'll leave it to Sam and our amazing speakers. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to get stuck straight into it. So please, oh Christ, there's 2 of these. Please put your hands together for Jonny Burch.
So I'm not going to hire you as my tapper. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. A long-time fan of Design Club, and Sam, of course. I'm here to not really talk about design. Tap, tap. I'm going to talk about climbing your mountain, and the font hasn't loaded. So some of the words might not be present in this presentation, but we'll find out how it goes. Okay, this is going to be good. So I'm going to tell you a story about 3.5 years ago. I got married. Self high five. Here's a picture of my wife and I on our wedding day. We are still married. same wife, doing all right. So I won't do a second self-high five, or this is going to take a very long time. But I'm not going to tell you about the wedding. I'm going to tell you actually, am I better in the light or out? I'll stay here. I'm going to tell you about the stag do. The stag do was, the theme was the remotest pub in the British mainland, which happened to be on a spur of land on West Scotland called Knoydart. Knoydart, most famous for a pub, the owner of which was arrested for having 50 illegal guns a couple of years ago. So we were safe. But really hard to get to, boat or walk to this pub. So something a bit different as a stag do. So 16 intrepid travelers from London and the surrounding areas decided to get a plane to Glasgow and then a bus to the local port to Knoydart and then a boat to Knoydart. And the central tenet of this stag do was actually a walk, a gentle stroll up a hill. You can see, not a difficult hill, maybe take an hour. Get to the top, drink whiskey, look at the view, eat a sandwich. Lovely. Simple. Spoiler, was not simple. So just to give you a kind of a bit of a sense of the kind of people present on this stag do, I would say about 50% of people hadn't been north of Watford, let alone the Hadrian's Wall. One of my friends decided, upon hearing that we were climbing a mountain, to bring his football boots. They were the most outdoor shoes he owned. So just to set the scene on what was about to happen, not many of them had done mountains very much. But it was fine because it's an hour. How hard can it be? And we're really all just about the whiskey, right? So fine. I'm just going to tell you right now, there was some churn on that walk. For those of you who know what churn is, I'm sure all of you know what churn is. We started in high spirits. Everyone very excited. A slightly unusual stag do, we'll agree. We've had to travel for about 16 hours to get here. Usually we're going to Magaluf or something like that, but this time we'll try something a bit different. And we're going on a nice walk. Everyone's very excited. Within the first hour, 25% of the walkers had decided that actually it was much more fun to play frisbee after the first hill. Unfortunately, we had reached a false summit. If you've done much walking before, you'll know that when you're climbing a mountain, a full summit is really where you think you've got to the top, and then you really haven't got to the top. And that's going to be important for the rest of my talk. So if you remember nothing else, remember that. So this is the view that we had when we were first climbing the mountain. You can see, despite the font choice here, that this was a full summit, another one, and then the real top, not even visible from this point of view. So anyway, within an hour, lost 25%. As we reached every new full summit, more people started going, what is this? What are we doing? Shall we just stay here, eat our sandwich? Can you just give me a bottle of whiskey and I'll just stay here? You keep the frisbee and we'll just hang out. Luckily, we did manage to get to the top eventually, but there were emergency sandwiches and whiskey on the way up. So in reality, it took us 6 hours to get to the top of that mountain. False advertising on the part of my best man, but we got there. And I was thinking about that more recently as I was thinking about another mountain that I have been climbing. About 18 months ago, I started a company. And I'm going to tell you about some of the full summits that I have hit along the way. But I'm aware that a lot of the people in this room probably aren't thinking about necessarily starting their own business. So I would ask you all to think about a mountain that you're climbing, and that can be either starting a company, or it can be your next promotion, or your career in general. It can be getting married. It can be getting fit, mental health, all of that stuff, having a baby, all that stuff counts. So there must be something in each of your minds that counts as a mountain, something you're going for. And for the rest of this talk, have that in mind, because hopefully it will still apply. We'll see. Anyway, so 18 months ago, I started my climb. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 3 full summits that most spring to mind on that journey. The first one, well, I'll set the scene to start with. Back in February last year, I left my job at Deliveroo. I was a design manager there. And I'm a designer, just in case it's not clear. That's probably why I apply for this whole event, because it's not really about design. And I was a design manager at Deliveroo, and I was looking at my calendar, and my calendar was full of blue. Meetings, workshops, lots of things that I hadn't put in it, one-to-ones, things that could have been emails, frankly. And I looked at it on a Sunday night and I thought, I don't really want to do this anymore. And this is the kind of the secret, the hidden world of the design manager is you are not doing design anymore. You're going to meetings quite a lot. And I realized that wasn't for me. To contextualize this, when I graduated from university back in the heady days of 2008, I started a magazine for creative graduates. It was called Shell Suit Zombie. Don't ask me why. Thought it was funny at the time. Lasted about 5 years. As a team, we printed about 15,000 copies of our magazine. It never made any money. It was never meant to. We ran a lot of raucous parties. I learned what a rave was and then went to lots of them. I stuck pegs on that guy's face. And it was probably one of the most formative and interesting and fulfilling parts of my career to date. And it was nothing to do with my day job. It was something I had started on a whim. And I've ever since thought about that time and wanted to do something like that again. So in February 2018, I quit my job at Deliveroo. I remember there was a Q&A at work on my last day for the whole kind of tech organization. And there was a Q&A with me because I was leaving to start a company with a big social mission to help the gig economy workers of the world to earn more fairly and all this stuff. And everyone was really excited about it. And I thought that it was a mere matter of months to get to profit and Lambos and exits and TechCrunch and all of those things that everyone wants. Easy, not too difficult at all. So I quit my job. And then 3 weeks after I quit my job, we weren't working on that idea anymore. And we went on to try all sorts of different things. 3 of us, it was me and 2 friends who were at Uber and Palantir, and we left our jobs together to go and start a tech company. And we hadn't worked out what we were actually going to do. We had an issue, and it was not actually the quality of our ideas. We didn't really disprove that any of these ideas were good. We were going out, testing landing pages, finding customers in the real world, joining Facebook groups and trying to persuade people to give them 20 quid for half an hour of their time. All of the good stuff that you do when you're working out what your problem is. But then every so often, one of us would go, I don't really want to work on that anymore. Let's try something different. We'd end up half a day for every day. We'd sit together and think, what should we build next? That's not really a good thing. And I was a big part of the problem. When we decided to join forces, another member of the trio of us said, I want to be CEO, I want to run the show. And I thought, great. I don't want to get involved in fundraising. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I just want to work on product. I want to solve this problem. That's what I've always done. And I realized, probably after my 2 co-founders, that I actually did want to do that quite a lot. So 100 days after we formed a company and I left Deliveroo, I left the company again. Damn. And that was the first of my full summits. I thought by 100 days I would have some money in the bank, some users, some traction, 2 co-founders. Instead, I had no team, no users, no money. I was living off my savings, which I had done a terrible job of saving. So nothing, blank sheet of paper. Luckily, 1 year later, I met the new love of my life alongside my wife, and doesn't matter. Neil. And Neil is fantastic. But the other 2 guys were fantastic as well. The difference is, now I know what I want. So the first thing that I kind of learnt from screwing up was that it's important to find the people that you want to work with. And that's not just picking the best people that you can find, is working out what you want and being really honest about telling them that and making sure that they're comfortable with what you want to do. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, on to my second full summit. And I'll give you a bit of context as to what actually this company is building. I'm so far behind with these notes. I'm just going to crack on with them. Okay, so how many of you work at a company that has a spreadsheet that attempts to describe what you're meant to do in your job? Okay, a third. There should be more of you than that, and that is my goal. Okay, so there's a lot of these spreadsheets out there, and when I had my moment of, oh damn, I have nothing at all, I realized that what I'd been doing at Deliveroo before I left was building one of these spreadsheets to help to define what good looks like when you're maybe a junior designer, mid-level designer, senior, lead, to get to manager, to get to VP. How do you know what's good? And generally these spreadsheets, they all look different, but are kind of the same. They have all the positions along the top and all the skills and competencies down the side, and they attempt to describe that. And I'd collected a whole load of those together. And the first thing that I did, they're no fun at all. So I decided to collect them together as a resource for other people to read through all these spreadsheets and work out what they were meant to do. And it got a lot of traction. I built it in a day, got shared a lot. So therefore, I dedicated the next 6 months of my life to trying to build something better, which ended up looking a little bit like this. And I can see Hugo at the back. Hugo saw this in its infancy. I rolled out to great acclaim, well, not to a great splash, or attempted to make as much of a splash as I could by posting on my own LinkedIn profile, that I'd launched Progression Pack, which was a tool to help define what good looks like for designers and then help them to measure themselves against that. And it was built by me out of a bunch of Airtable. It's like a spreadsheet, but like pro spreadsheets. And some kind of crappy code that you would deploy on your own website, and you buy it once, 250 quid, never see me again. And I sold a few of them, quite a few. But as soon as we started trying to implement them into companies, it was clear that it wasn't going to work. Every time I wanted to make a change, I had to deploy to everyone's different forks of my GitHub repo, because it was all in their own branches. And then they'd break it, they'd break their Airtable, and it would all fall over. And this was like with a dozen of them. There was no way it was going to scale. So this was my next challenge. How do you build something that actually works when you're a designer and you're not an engineer and you don't really know how to build production quality code? So I had to swallow my pride at that point. I had, yeah, we love it when he cries. So I had my next full summit at that point, which was really me having to ditch something that I'd spent months building and start again from scratch. And that was painful. So I started building that in probably December 2018, January 2018, found Neil. Neil, my co-founder, is an engineer, which is good because he knew what he was doing. And by April, we had our first customers back onto our new product. Building something in a hacky, crappy way is super quick, but you can add whatever you can imagine. Building it properly takes quite a long time. In fact, I made that observation in August, where I was just amazed that it had taken us 6-7 months to build the stuff that I'd built in 2 weeks the first time. But we got there. We got there and we started onboarding our customers. But it had taken me swallowing all my pride, this thing that I had put out into the world that I was like, this is now the future of your company. I had then taken back down again 2 months later. All of those LinkedIn posts and Twitter posts, the links didn't go anywhere anymore. And I had to stop selling that thing and start building something new that I knew was going to be harder to build, take longer, and be more risk to me. Remember, still no money at this point. Still sitting there, my wife going, what are you doing? We now have an office, so it feels a bit more, I'm less fun employed now. But so it's okay to go back down to find a different route. And sometimes it's really necessary and actually the best thing for you. So, my final full summit. So we, as I was saying, we started getting customers onto our product in around March, April time. There were a whole bunch of them that were chomping at the bit, ready to go. So we started making money. Start that GIF off because it's good. He never gets his high five. It's really sad. So we had our first revenue, monthly recurring revenue, the dream if you're building a SaaS business. And then we started getting feature requests and things coming in. Our customers wanted more stuff. And there was a whole load of stuff broken in our product. So heads down, a couple more months, building stuff for them, making it more robust. And then we looked up and we realized we hadn't grown our revenue at all. And our revenue was nowhere near the amount that you need to sustain a business or 2 people. So we went out and decided to go to our wait list that we'd built over the 6 months before. And in the next 2 months, we sold 1 license. There's nothing more sobering than the thought that you've spent 14 months building something that no one wants. That is a real looking into your own soul moment. But what we realized was, this was our last full summit, was we needed to go and sell. I'm from a design background, my co-founder from an engineering background. We've never sold anything in our lives. And what I'd been doing, I'd been getting on sales calls, all these sales calls, friend zoning people, left, right, and center. We'd have a lovely chat for half an hour. I feel like we could go for a drink, or I feel like I've really made a new connection. But that would be it. And then they'd be like, that was interesting to find out more about that product. And I'd be like, yeah, interesting to find out more about that person. No sales would come from it. And the difference between customer development and user research, which is what I was kind of more comfortable with, and a sales call, was being able to talk about money and closing and next steps and making them feel like this is something that we could actually buy and use and it would be valuable to us and this is how much it's going to cost. What I started doing was asking on sales calls, how could I do this better? And it turns out everyone I was talking to was a better salesman than I was, which is great because they would be like, yeah, so that bit where you talked about how exactly you do this thing, didn't care about that, but I do want to know how much it costs. And I would love to know how I get started. And actually, if you tell me how much it costs, I'm probably not going to be scared because we have quite a big budget. We're quite a big company. So it's quite uncomfortable talking about money, whether it's your own salary, or whether it's trying to sell something. And swallowing that pride was deeply difficult, actually, for me personally. And starting to be comfortable talking about money and not making apologies for it was one of the big things that I learned. So the good news is this journey will continue, and we are barely at the start of it. But that one sale in 2 months, we turned that around, luckily. Otherwise, that was actually in May and June or something like that. So if we were still getting one sale every 2 months, then I'd probably have given up by now. So we've worked it out. We've worked out what our process looks like. But what I would say, and remember, your journey is different to mine, but it's going to take longer than you think. Not if it's having a baby, that's usually fairly... But aside from that, it takes longer than you think. It takes you in different directions, and it's really important to be resilient as part of that journey. Still really behind. Okay, cool. So being resilient and pushing through those hard times and recognizing that actually sometimes you need to just not enjoy every day, but know that it's pointing you in the right direction. One of my favorite quotes, I'm sure you recognize Julie Andrews. She is an absolute legend. But she has a quote, all careers go up and down like friendships, like marriages, like anything else. You can't bat 1,000 all the time. And I think about that because up until Neil joined, it was just me. But even with a co-founder, if I don't have a good week, the company doesn't have a good week. Like, there are weeks, days, weeks, maybe even months where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm meant to be doing next. I would love someone to just tell me what to do. And there's no one there. And that's okay. Like, sometimes you're not having a good, productive time, but as long as you know that you're kind of working towards something that is of value, and you can get through those hard times. And when you're on your own, those hard times are particularly acute. The highs and lows are higher and lower. So to recap, luckily, I think we have had all the words, which is good. Walk with the right people for you. So when you think about taking that walk up your mountain, walk with the people that not only are able to get up the mountain, but also are people that know who you are and know that they would support you as well. It's okay to go back down to find a different path. I've done that actually since this talk was written. There's been even more of these. I probably have many more false peaks now. And bring snacks, wear sturdy shoes is my third tip. Your snacks may be delicious snacks, or they may be the support of people around you, or it may be just the knowledge that sometimes it's not going to go that well and you can get through it. But carrying on and being resilient is really important. So just to kind of finish off this walk, everyone complaining all the way up. Why do we have blisters? Where's the whiskey? Why aren't we in Magaluf? We get to the top and all of us look out and there's 10 more mountains next to climb. And everyone gets really excited about what they're going to do next. There was one of those moments where, like, I had been worried that I had organized a stag do that would go down in history as one of the most painful. But actually it was this moment of glory where it all went right and everyone got excited about what was next. But it's not really about getting to the top. If all you care about is getting to the top, that was me when I quit my job. I cared about having done all the things, the Lambos and the exit. If all you care about is getting to the top, you're not going to get there. But if you care about every step along the way, it doesn't have to be always super fun. It doesn't have to be easy. It definitely won't be. But if it's a step that you want to take, then that's the only way to get to the top. It's really cheesy, this talk. I tried to ramp it up. Come on, boo. So I would ask you finally, what is the journey that you want to take? And I also have a quick plug. So if you are interested in just checking out kind of what we're up to, then you can go to one of these two websites. We allow people to host their own frameworks, so you can check out Clear Lefts and Intercoms, two companies you may have heard of. We're rolling out loads more of those. So that's kind of an exciting plug that I kind of slotted in at the end. That doesn't make sense with anything else that I've said. But go there anyway. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Would you do it again, knowing how hard it was?
Would I do it again, knowing how hard it was? If I'd known when I quit my job what was going to happen over the next 18 months, I probably wouldn't have quit my job. That's definitely true, because I thought I was doing something different to the thing that I did. But I also have no regrets. So, yes, I think. Question is, how do you keep that momentum and energy when you've run out of sandwiches? Effectively, right. One of the biggest moments for that was obviously leaving two co-founders and having to completely reset what I thought I was doing next. And actually at the same time, I got an offer of a job with a title that 2 years earlier would have been like my dream job. And I had this, it was like quitting your job again. I was like, well, it was interesting. It was an interesting 3 months, and maybe I should just go back and do this now, and my LinkedIn will be restored. But I knew that there was this thing that would still bother me. And I think for me, it was just, there was an itch that I needed to scratch, and I hadn't scratched it yet. I think it's also worth saying that, you know, there's been a huge amount of privilege and lots of things that have helped me to do that, and everyone's journey will be different. In fact, a question that I got before when I presented this was, how would you go about it if you can't quit your job? And I think that there is a version of this, of going on this journey without quitting your job, and by doing something on the side and building that up over time. It's not the way that I went, but I think it's very possible. So what I did, there were things that enabled me to do that, but that wasn't your question at all, but I wanted to say it anyway. Anyone got any others? Yeah. They actually, so when I left, the day that I left, we had this weird meeting where we, as three of us, talked about what we were going to work on next. And that was an hour. And then the next half hour was me saying that I wasn't going to work on it because I was leaving. And they're working on that, and they've raised a bunch of money, and it's also kind of HRE type thing, but around kind of interviews. So both still working together, and frankly, I was the thorn in the side, so they've probably had a much easier time now I've left. So, I'm very happy to admit that I was a pain in the ass. Yeah. Did I have a deadline for myself? No, and actually I tried to design it in a way that, and this is another thing that I was able to do that, you know, some people wouldn't be able to do, but I managed to find enough, the odd day of contracting that would like keep me just over the, so I left my job with not very much in savings, and I ended up doing the odd day here and there, the odd week here and there. I think I worked, 30 days or something in that first year, which was, you know, that didn't end up with a good salary, but it was enough to just keep me going. And to me, it was really important. As soon as I left my two co-founders, it was really important for me to work out how to do this sustainably and not just have like a line in the sand where I go back to my job. Rightly or wrongly, I don't know if that's actually a good thing, frankly, because it means I can just noodle around forever. But yeah, that's how I thought about it. Some people definitely do have that deadline. Yeah.
You left your original job because you weren't doing much designing, and then you left next week for CEO stuff. Do you do any designing?
I am the CEO and designer. So, well, I can't remember who I was talking. I was talking to someone about this just before I came on stage. But when there's two of you in the company, which is currently true, you are also the marketeer. You're the salesperson. Luckily, I'm not doing the finance. Neil is excellent at that, and he's automated it all, and it's glorious. If you ever want to talk about Zero, then don't talk to me, talk to him. I'll give you his number. But you end up doing so many things. So actually, as a product manager, my internal conflict is like me as a designer wanting the absolute perfect experience, and me as a product manager with a team of only 2 people that can ship, saying there's absolutely no way that we'll ship that. And that's actually the hard thing now, is I am my own stakeholder. So all of you people hating your stakeholders, be your own stakeholder, and then you hate yourself. It's weird. One more question. Yeah. Many beers. No, actually, so how did you find Neil, and how did you convince him it was a good idea? The answer to that is I found him on the internet. I mean, it was the weirdest thing, actually. I started streaming my coding sessions on Twitch. That's a whole different talk, that one. I've had a weird time, okay? No, I started streaming my coding sessions on Twitch, and people started watching them and like basically telling me how to fix my code, which was interesting. But then through that whole, I joined like a few kind of, there's a website called Indie Hackers. So we're bootstrapping our company. We're trying not to raise money, side thing. But there's a website for people who are trying to do that. They have a Slack channel for London with meetups and stuff. We met on that Slack channel, and it turned out I live in Leytonstone, he lives in Stratford. For those people that know London well, that's like 10 minutes away from each other. So it was kind of meant to be with the same goals. It was like, I don't know how we managed it, but it's kind of magic. So no tips, I don't know. No, encourage serendipity. Try and put yourself in those situations where you can find people like you. Oh yeah, that was the last one, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonny. All right. Now I've got to try and marry up these slides again. I've met with Jonny for various coffees throughout this this journey and seen some of those products, RIP Highlight. And I also remember the Twitch coding session. That's great. Cool. Yeah, next up, go straight into it. Please welcome to the stage, Beth Brettingham.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Beth, and I'm going to talk to you a bit today about, there we go. I'm a senior product designer at Monzo. I've been working there since April, so a little bit over 6 months now. Most of the time I've been there, I've been working on the new redesign that we launched back in September. And I'm also a mum, or mom, as I say, because I'm American. And I'm going to talk to you a bit today about how becoming a mom has changed the way I approach my work. So one thing that you often hear when you're talking about a design or you're talking about some user flows, when the conversation rolls around to usability is, yeah, but would your mom be able to use it? And I have to say, I really hate it. I think it comes from a good place. I think people are trying to think of someone different than the people in the room who might not be able to understand the design or the prototype. But The problem with it is that somehow we've allowed mothers to kind of become the representatives of the non-tech savvy group, this technophobic group. There's even a website that this enterprising individual has come up with where his mom will test your website for you. He says in it that she doesn't understand what Twitter is, she yells at her computer, and she can't figure out how to find a window that she's minimized. And I'm sure there are plenty of mothers out there that are like this. But the problem with stereotypes is there are also plenty of mothers who are not like this. My mom's certainly not. She started a company. She taught herself how to code at 50, and now she runs a successful Salesforce consulting company. It says on the website, you should design for users who are not like you. But there's two sides to every coin. By assuming that this lovely woman who's, I think, quilting in this picture is not like us, we're also assuming that she's not getting up in the morning and coming to her job as an engineering lead or a product manager. So before I became a mother, I had some ideas about how moms might be. When I was pregnant and I went on maternity leave, I thought all the other mothers are probably only going to want to talk about breastfeeding, how little sleep they've had, and the latest baby poo. And, you know, we do talk about those things a lot, for like hours. But you'd be surprised, as I was, to find that actually these women, before they became mothers, were people that had interesting jobs. They were journalists and accountants, engineers, and after becoming a mother, they continue to be those people. Just gonna also catch up. So these stereotypes that we have about mothers, we're assumed to be warm, communal, and caring. And those are all wonderful things to be. I want to be those things. But the problem with these stereotypes is that it also assumes that they're a contrast with the traits that we think of for male-type jobs. Things like agency, competitiveness, assertiveness. And male-type jobs tend to be the high-paying, high-earning ones. Doctors, lawyers, design directors. So there's a perceived lack of fit between mothers and these traditional male-type jobs, the stereotypes we hold about what you need to be in one of these jobs and what mothers have. Using the cover story that a startup communications company was looking for a head of their marketing department, a sociologist called Shelley Coley and her colleagues went out and did some research. They went out and they found that compared with paper non-mothers, identical paper mother applicants were rated about 10% less competent, 15% less committed to the workplace, and worthy of $11,000 less in salary. Moreover, they found that 47% of mothers compared to 84% of non-mothers were recommended for hire. In another study, over 1,000 fictitious CVs were sent out for real jobs advertised. Each employer was sent 2 identical applicants. Sometimes they were both the same gender, sometimes both male, sometimes both female, but what they found was that mothers received only half as many callbacks as their identically qualified childless counterparts. Mothers, over the course of their careers, mothers earn 80% of what similarly qualified non-mothers earn. They're thought to bear the brunt of the gender pay gap, which is a huge problem because they're also the most likely to have dependents. So by negatively impacting mothers' career prospects, there's a real chance that we're reducing caregivers' ability to provide food, clothing, and education. So, I don't know, we've heard a lot about moms. We've heard that they're pretty busy. They might not be sleeping very much. maybe it's true. Maybe they're just not really able to be 100% in the workplace as well as raising a family and spending a lot of time in the with their children and doing other things like that. Maybe they just can't bring their A game to the workplace. But actually, you'd be surprised by the title of this talk that that is not the case. Over the course of their careers, mothers, more than any other demographic, including men, women without children, and fathers, achieve the most at work. So I went out and I spoke to some moms, mothers I work with, and mothers that I know that work in the tech industry, and I asked them, how has becoming a mother affected the way that they work? And here are some of the things they said. Mothers are ruthlessly efficient and focused. This is definitely something that I found. Moms have to make the most out of their time at work. One mom said, becoming a mom makes you aware that time is limited, so you better not waste it. And I've definitely noticed this in the way I work. I'm not great at multitasking. If I have 8 things to do, then I just get really overwhelmed and I can't actually get anything done. So I've had to learn to prioritize and really make sure that I'm always working on the most impactful thing. So I work really closely with my product managers, and we'll figure out what exactly our priorities are for that day. I don't know what that is. We even have a that's fine. We even have a ritual in planning where we'll say, next week we'll be proud to have accomplished X, Y, Z. And this helps me to maintain focus and make sure that I'm always working on my hardest thing first. So that's another thing I do, is coming in the morning, and before I check Slack, before I check email, I get my hardest thing out of the way. One quote I had was, when obstacles come my way, I plow through them like a machine rather than daydreaming about possible solutions. And this came from Afka, a quality analyst at Monzo. And as a designer, I really love diving into a problem and thinking about the solution from every possible angle. I found that the amount of time I have to solve a problem is exactly the amount of time it's going to take me to do it. So something I've learned to do is give myself deadlines, and they have to seem real or I won't actually complete them. So something I'll do is, if I have a big project coming up, I'll set deadlines to share my work way earlier than I think I could have anything ready to share. And what this does is forces agency in my work, and it helps me to focus on the problem I need to solve, and not go too far off into different tangents. The other thing it allows me to do is get feedback on my work early. I think before, a lot of the part of my career, I didn't share work as early as I could have because I was afraid of getting negative feedback. I was afraid I didn't really want people to see the mess that design can be before it actually gets to something beautiful and something nice that you want to share. And getting this feedback has helped me accomplish a couple of things. Often the things that people notice aren't what I expected them to pick up on. The things I thought people would criticize is not what they look at. And the other thing is that it helps bring my whole team, my team of engineers, the product managers, and other people that I work with along with me on my design journey. And the other thing I do is communicate my work widely. I call it taking my projects on tour, and I do my best to share it way more than I over-communicate, way more than I think I need to on Slack. And if I can get up and talk about whatever we're doing, I think it really helps to give visibility of the work to the rest of the, to either other teams and other people that maybe I didn't even know had a strong opinion about what we were doing. I don't have to listen to all the opinions that come back, but what it does help me do is to maybe see if there's somebody I didn't know that I needed to hear from, and it helps to eliminate last-minute surprises. So the next thing that mothers are able to do is to tolerate interruptions. I love this. A lot of times as a mom, you might be sitting in a cafe, having a coffee with a friend, when suddenly you see a little hand plunk into that coffee and fling it all over the restaurant. And you have to stop what you're doing, stop your conversation, and go and deal with said situation, get everything tidied up, and then you can go right back to what you were talking about. And I think that this ability really translates well to the workplace, because if you're working on a design project, you really got your head in on something, and somebody stops you and asks you a question, it doesn't take that long to get back into what you were doing. It's not a massive interruption. The other thing that becoming a parent has taught me, and some of the other mothers I spoke to, was it puts things in perspective. A lot of times if I've had a busy, stressful day at work, I go home and then I have a whole nother life that starts, which is sometimes preparing dinner, although if I'm honest, my husband does it a lot. Doing the bedtime routine, reading stories, doing baths, and usually by the time I've done all of that stuff, whatever was going on at work isn't something that it seems that important anymore. And another thing that it does is, as Pam Gianni, one of our designers, says, things are lighter in a way. Being a mom makes me want to do my work in a more fun way. And this is definitely true as well. You are around children a lot more, and they bring something different into your life. You see things from their point of view, which is really interesting. The other thing I heard was that being a parent brings more humanity. Olga, one of our Android engineers, says, life of a parent is different than that of a 20-year-old coder. It brings us closer to the people. And she's absolutely right. Becoming a mother has made me become more part of my community. we go to parent groups, and I've met loads of people that I might not have encountered in my social circles before. And I think that helps me design better products that are more suited for all types of audiences. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about that I heard from mothers was that we choose work that we care about. If we're going to have to be away from our families, then we really, really want to be doing something that we're passionate about, that we care about. One quote from a product designer, Jessica, was, "I'm more aware of the time when I'm away from my daughter. I have to work on something I believe in." And this, I think, is really true. So to close, I want to just say something, a quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, better known as the notorious RBG, U.S. Supreme Court Justice who excelled at Harvard Law School as one of 9 women in a class of 500, while I might add, managing to raise 2 children. We should not be held back from pursuing our full talents, from contributing what we could contribute to the society because we fit into a certain mold, because we belong to a group that historically has been the object of discrimination. I feel really lucky. I decided not to hide the fact that I was a mother when I applied for Monzo, and they were really, really supportive. In my application, when I was asked what is your favorite product of the past year, I said my boobs, because they really are amazing. They produce milk, they figure out how much they should make, and they even have antibodies if your baby's sick. I don't understand. But I think that my situation is not what everyone I've talked to has had. I think there's a lot of mothers who feel like they need to hide the fact that they're a parent. If they have to leave early to pick up a child, they don't want to say that that's the reason. And I think that's partially because in our society we tend to see them kind of being a parent and having a family and work as 2 opposing forces. And if you're good at one, it has to come at the detriment of another. And I don't think that's true. I think that being a mother and being a parent in general can be a great attribute. It teaches you so many skills, and you can bring those into the workplace. And that's all. Thanks. Questions? Yes? I think it was a really hard question, because I think it always comes at the point of, okay, I'm going to have to take 6 months to a year out, and is that something I want to do? I think for me, it came, and I think as Jonny mentioned, there's kind of ups and downs in your career, and at the point that I decided to have a child, like I was looking for a new job. I wasn't really happy where I was at, and it worked out okay. I was kind of ready for a new and different challenge, but I think it is always a hard thing to try to think about and make that judgment of when it's the right time. It helped me as well. We did shared parental leave, which was also great. So my husband took time as well. Any other questions? Yes. So the question was, how did he do with getting time off work as a man? Well, so with shared parental leave, I think they have to give it to you if you ask to do it. I think it's a law, but he did struggle a little bit. He kind of, when he took 3 months off. We were going to do 6 and 6, but we ended up doing 9 and 3. And he did feel like when he came back, he wasn't sure how warm the reception was. But I think he's the first person at his company. He works for a pretty big company that has ever taken parental. He's the first man that's ever taken parental leave more than the 2 weeks. But I think they're a pretty like old school company, so I'm hoping that's not always the case. And everyone should be encouraged to do parental leave because it's fantastic. Yeah. So the question is going back to work, what was the experience like coming back to work? So for me, I think this is definitely something that's different for everyone. I went back 4 days. I'm still on 4 days. But I had, after maternity leave, I had some holiday saved up, and so I could take I could kind of go back 3 days and have a nice settling in period. It helped that there wasn't loads happening, so it wasn't really stressful at work. But the other thing that helped is that Luke, my husband, was off. So I didn't also have, one thing that's really tough is you've never been away from your child and then suddenly you have to be, and that makes it really difficult. So he was the one that was taking her to nursery and he was with her. I wasn't having to do that too. And so that really helped. But it was a big change from being on maternity leave and doing loads of changing nappies and feeding and doing things like that to suddenly switching and going back to work. So I think it's worth giving, if possible, giving time to settle in and make the change, and hopefully a company that's really supportive of that. Yes? Okay, so the question is, what practical tips can you give men to support women in the organization? Is that right? I think the first great thing is to have empathy and to consider the case and know what it's like, or not necessarily know what it's like, but just have it to be something that men are thinking about, and women. It's not, I agree that traditionally maybe it's seen as a women's issue. So I think things like shared parental leave, if possible, are so fantastic, because then like having a supportive, if possible, having a supportive partner is really helpful, and having family and parenthood, which I think that's definitely where society is heading, and but having that seen as this is an equal effort from both sides, that's really important. So in the home and then in the workplace, having people, I think, that I guess also think that way really helps. Does that answer the question? It's a really tough one. Anyone else? Yeah?
In terms of childcare, do you and your husband split the work equally? And how, like, if that split ends up being more on your husband, would that have to impact it?
Yep. So childcare, the question is, do we split it evenly? So my husband works 5 days a week. I work 4, but he works from home, so he usually does the pickups, and so he does a lot of like during my 4 days when I'm working. I'm working, like I'm really kind of full on working. So he picks her up, he does the dinner, and then I can come home usually and meet them for dinner and bath time and all of that. And so that really helps because I don't have all that pressure to get home by 5:30. Which like a lot of people might want to do, and that's fine too, but it helps me because it's hard for me to get home at that time. So I think in that way we do share it. And then I have the Friday off where we just do fun stuff. And then we didn't share equally, as I said, because I did 9 months of maternity leave and then he did 3. But I think just doing that amount of time really helped him to kind of know he has his own routine with her. It's not me that's like, this is how you feed her, this is how you change her nap. Like he knows how to do, they have their own thing that they do that I don't know about, which is really great. And then he came to me and was like, Beth, no, like that's not how we're, like she doesn't like that anymore. So it's great. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think it's something so the question was like, do you go home and do work after? It's because of that kind of set deadline of like, well, I've got to get home, I've got to see her, and if I have to, the days I have to pick her up from nursery because I have to get her at 5:30, and it's insane to try to like leave work at. I mean, not that work's not supportive, but just that it's hard to get out at that time. Mostly like because I feel guilty. But sometimes then I'll go and I'll do a little bit of work after she's in bed, but I try not to too much. I try to just say that's it, and to do more of the prioritizing stuff and the like. This is good enough. That is my answer. I do not know. Any other questions? One more? I don't think anyone has any more. Oh, yeah.
How difficult or easy was it to get your employer to agree to?
Well, I thought that it was pretty. The hardest thing I think was asking. And it is a really hard thing. It's a really hard thing to be like, is this definitely what I want? And but I think I was terrified to ask that question because I thought I didn't know what they would say. But in the end, I asked for it. I mentioned it at the beginning of the interview process that it was something I'd be interested in, and then we talked about it at the end, and they were fine with it. Actually, it didn't end up it wasn't anywhere near as scary of a thing to talk about as I thought. But moms they've been really good about that, and they were really flexible. But I think it's something you can ask and you can talk about, and I don't see why it should have to be such an issue. I think flexibility in the workplace really helps different types of people to be able to contribute. So that is my story of how I asked. Cool. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much, Beth and Jonny. You've been amazing. We have the space for like another 30 minutes or so grab another drink, have a chat, but then we're going to go to anyone who's interested, the Owl and Pussycat for small drinks then. So if you want to come and chat maybe about speaking at a future event or sponsoring another event, then come and chat. Yeah, we'll be there. Thank you very much for coming. Have a lovely evening. Cheers.